You saw this morning China promising to fire back against the Trump tariffs. Are we in a trade war? Are we in a huge game of chicken? Or is this just a sideshow from your point of view?
I'll let you know. I mean, the problem is that how many times can you be on the edge of your seat waiting for the shoe to drop, it doesn't drop, and how many times can you get that anxious about it? I would say, I don't know if this is going to be the pattern of North Korea, a lot of bluster. I don't think we're in a suicide pact on this, so I suspect that we're not going to cause the economies to collapse with a, smooth hauling on steroids. But I do think that, so I don't think that's what's going on. I do think, as some people have commented, that this is kind of a negotiating pattern. That would be my best take.
And you went to China with Trump all those months ago. Are you disappointed with his China policy?
Well, I met him in China. There was a trade mission, and I'll have to say, let me give credit. It didn't occur to us to go on the trade mission. I got called up by the White House and said, do you guys have a pending transaction that's near enough to close that we could close it as part of our trade mission to China? And I just said, no, we don't. And I got a call back, and we have a lot of things going on in China. I got a call back from them a couple of weeks later, just before, not like I was looking for an extra trip to China, and they said, remember what we asked you? It turns out, yes, you do. The Chinese said you do. And so we went there, and in fact, we closed an important transaction that I want to, which is a kind of a joint venture between ourselves and the Sovereign Wealth Fund of China to go out and each raise an amount of money, put it in our managed private equity fund, and invest in U.S. businesses that will be able to export into China. So this was an early effort, symbolic in the scheme of the whole level of U.S. trade, but an important symbol of what China wanted to do to spur U.S. trade.
Do you think China's attitude has changed? Back then, China seemed to be looking outward. They were doing things like the deal with you. And now suddenly, they are retaliating at the moment, certainly in terms of rhetoric.
I think the whole thing with China is there's a lot of frustration with China from here. I know that China is very frustrated with the sudden aggressiveness of U.S. policy. But anybody who has transacted with China appreciates the potential of China, has had good experiences in China and frustrating experiences in China. And at various times, one or the other comes to the fore. We ourselves, to be quite honest, 15 years ago almost, set up our joint venture in China that was to lead to us being able to own our own investment bank in China, which seemed imminent at the time. And there have been a lot of suggestions that that was going to happen very quickly, and in fact, statements that said it's already available. And then oftentimes that gets announced at the senior-most level, and when it gets into the ministries that have to affect these things, we found out recently that now, these many years later, that in order to own our own entity, it has to be capitalized at a level that would make it totally not sensible for us to do it, and so we feel back at square one. That level, again, we're in finance, but we're advisors to people in other industries, and other industries have similar experiences. And again, this would not be the course I would have done, not necessarily recommend, but I could see what happens at times. A lot of the people who are expressing too publicly, this is a very difficult thing. Americans, this is a very bad thing, which of course we know from taking economic courses that it is at the end of the day, and publicly making these statements because they do business in China, and you have to pay homage to your clients in China and your customers in China, and at the same time, when they're not in public, could very well be going to the U.S. government and saying, something, what you're doing may not be such a bad thing. And so I can understand how we get to the place that we get to.
Did you see the argument that was maybe acceptable at $50 billion worth of tariffs, but now you've got $200 billion and you've got the prospect of a full-blown, it's gone beyond.
Again,
the game of chicken has got.
It's not my style, but if what you want to show is, if you want to give somebody an incentive to see the world from your point of view, it doesn't help to remind them of your negotiating position if it's a better one. And the fact is, if we go tit for tat, by the time you get to 100, they run out of things to apply a tariff to, and we don't. And so if you want to make that point, you make that point. Now, that's what you would do if you were crazy and really wanted to end free trade. And that's what you would do if it was a negotiating position and you wanted to remind your negotiating counterparty of just how much firepower you had to bring to the negotiation. Which one is it? You know.
But do you think Donald Trump is a protectionist? He disliked NAFTA. He has this long record.
Well, remember Rosencrantz and Guildenstern play this. You can't even play this flute. How could you play me? Who am I to say what he thinks? He doesn't. I don't know what he would do, what I would do in his place, and I'm not sure. Certainly not sure what he would do in his place. But if you ask me, can I give a narrative about how this is a useful thing to do, I can't say, as a lot of people do, with respect to almost everything he does, this makes no sense at all. It does not make no sense to me at all.